The man in the mirror wasn't her reflection. When Santa first moved into the house, she was delighted. It was a good deal for what she got. Sure, it wasn't in the best part of town, but she was going to college nearby, so it was close enough. Plus, it was cheap and it had all the furniture she needed. That last part was actually what sold her, because buying new furniture would have cost her nearly half the amount she had saved. But one thing she didn't like were the mirrors. They were all old and foggy and nailed to the walls. There were 2 in the living room, 1 in the hallway, 1 in her bedroom, and a huge one in the bathroom. All of them were an eyesore and she wanted to rip them down, but she didn't want to make holes in the walls. So she just kept them there, even though they creeped her out. It was a few weeks later when she noticed something strange. She was brushing her teeth and looking at herself in the mirror. She brushed her teeth vigorously as she always did, but then she stopped. Her reflection hadn't blinked. She tried again. She closed one eye and then the other. Her reflection did the same, but not until a moment later. Then she tried closing both eyes at the same time. This time the reflection didn't move at all. "Weird," she said aloud. And then she smiled. A slow grin spread across her face. She was getting a little scared now. Was this some kind of trick? Had the mirror been reflecting her movements a split second late the whole time? Or was it only doing it now? She decided to go to bed early that night, partly because she was exhausted and partly because she didn't want to spend too much time alone in the dark house. But when she turned off the lights and climbed into bed, she could still see the faint glow from outside the window. And in the darkness, she thought she saw her reflection grinning at her from the wardrobe mirror. She told herself it was silly and went to sleep. However, she couldn't help glancing at the mirror every few minutes, but her reflection always looked the same. In the morning, she woke up early for class and rushed to the bathroom. She stared directly into the mirror and started brushing her teeth. But then she stopped. Again, her reflection hadn't blinked. This time she didn't even try to copy her movements. She just stood there and watched. "I'm going crazy," she said to herself, but she couldn't stop staring at the mirror. What was wrong with it? Over the next few days, Sana became more and more paranoid. Whenever she saw her reflection, she would do something weird to test it. If she was sitting still, she would slowly start moving her head. Her reflection would follow. If she stayed perfectly still, then her reflection would eventually stop moving. One afternoon, Sana came home from school to find that it had rained. She went over to the window and looked out at the gray skies. When she turned back to leave, she gasped. On the mirror, she saw the words "You're all alone," written in thin, wavering lines. She rubbed the glass with a tissue, but the writing wouldn't come off, and she knew those words weren't written in lipstick or ink. They seemed to have appeared on the mirror itself. That evening, Sana got a text from her friend asking if she wanted to hang out, but she declined. She didn't want to stay in the house, but she didn't feel comfortable leaving it either. She was afraid whatever was in the mirror might be waiting for her to step out. As soon as her friend's reply popped up on the screen, Sana quickly looked away. But when she glanced back, her reflection had turned around to look at the phone in her hand. But there was no one behind her, and that's when she felt it. Something cold and scaly slithered up her spine, like a snake or an eel. And then she heard a voice right behind her ear, dry and raspy, like autumn leaves, skittering across pavement. "Who are you?" she whispered. Turning slowly, her gaze locked onto the wardrobe mirror. Inside its foggy depths, she saw a man. His face was obscured by the dim lighting, but she could make out his tall frame and muscular arms. He was wearing what looked like a black suit and a white shirt, and he was smiling. Sana stumbled backwards. She fell against the bed and curled into a ball. She shut her eyes tight and waited for him to disappear. But when she opened them again, he was still there. He stepped out of the mirror, but he didn't come any closer. He just stood there watching her. And then he did something that made her blood run cold. He raised his hand, palm out, and pushed something toward her. At first, she couldn't tell what it was because it was too blurry. But then it came into focus. It was a key. Then he extended his arm further, almost as if offering her something. When Santa didn't respond, the man took the key back. He turned around and walked toward the mirror. He reached out and touched its surface. The glass rippled like water, and then he was gone. From that day on, Santa was never alone. The man followed her everywhere. Sometimes she would glance over and find him in the corner of her eye. Other times she would catch him staring at her from seemingly out of nowhere. And if she looked in the mirror, she would see him watching her from beyond the glass. If she asked people if they saw him, they would look at her strangely and shake their heads. And when she tried explaining, they would just think she was crazy. Santa started missing classes. She couldn't bring herself to go out, but the man never left. He followed her around the house, silently observing her every move. She tried calling the police, but when she told them about her stalker, they said that since no one had physically harmed her, there was nothing they could do. Even her friends thought she was making it up for attention. Days turned into weeks, and Santa became more and more desperate. One night, she had a terrifying dream. She was running through a dark tunnel. She didn't know where she was going, but she kept running. Behind her, she heard footsteps getting closer and closer. She could feel their hot breath on her neck and hear them whispering things she couldn't understand. In her dream, she finally found a light at the end of the tunnel, and she ran toward it. She burst through and found herself back in her room. But standing in the doorway was the man from the mirror, and then he smiled. It was a cruel, triumphant smile, and it sent shivers down her spine. She woke up screaming and drenched in sweat. From that day on, she began seeing the man everywhere, in the hallways, in the security cameras outside, even in shop windows. He was always there, watching her, waiting for her. Finally, Santa snapped. She grabbed a heavy vase from the shelf and flung it at the mirror. It shattered into a million pieces. But instead of breaking, the shards stuck together and reformed into another mirror. Then something horrifying happened. Blood started dripping from the cracks. It fell onto the floor and sloshed around her feet like black ink. And then a hand reached out. It was skeletal and bony, with long, sharp nails. Santa screamed and backed away. That's when she saw him. He was standing right behind her, staring at the bleeding mirror. "He's here," she whispered. "He's coming for me." But when she turned to run, the hand grabbed her ankle and pulled her down. She looked back and saw him reaching for her, his eyes glowing red in the darkness. Then everything went black. The next morning, Santa woke up in her bed. She was breathing heavily and her heart was pounding in her chest. She looked over at the wardrobe mirror and found herself smiling back. She blinked once, then again. But her reflection didn't blink at all. "Whatever's in the mirror, it's learning to be me,"